Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. So today we're going to talk about divorce and some related issues. Now, all of us know that divorce is a taboo subject in our society. Generally, it is not talked about, and obviously, because of the fact that it results in a breakup of marriage, so therefore, people generally are not aware of the subject simply because there is a dearth of information. People are not well informed, they're not well educated about this subject, and there are so many misconceptions which have arisen and which not only are found in our minds, but they are found in our practice as well. And the saddest part of this is that as a result of these misconceptions, the procedure for divorce has become a complete mockery. And what happens is that families which can be saved, which can be preserved from breaking up, they end up in a very miserable condition. And the worst to suffer, as we all would agree, are the children, if there are any. And obviously, it's a traumatic experience for the spouses as well. But it is very important that all of us educate ourselves regarding the procedure of divorce and also regarding the important aspects that we need to understand. And of course, we do pray that this never happens in our life to ourselves and to anyone that we know. But then, if it is something of an option which the Almighty has placed in our religion, then we need to understand that this is something that we must learn. So before starting off, we know that in most parts of the world, for example, the Christian world, divorce has become a very difficult procedure. It's a difficult phenomenon. And unless there is an issue of marital infidelity or some very specific reasons, a husband and wife cannot divorce for each other in a lot of the non-Muslim world. And precisely for this reason, they don't get married. And of course, another reason being that when divorce takes place, then in the Western world, then the property or the assets which are shared between the two, they are divided equally. So people are at times not willing to do that. So what happens is that they don't even enter into the marriage bond in the first place, and they would like to spend their lives as partners or as people who cohabit, as they say, in a single house, and in this way they continue. So this is not the case in the Sharia of the Almighty as far as God's Sharia is concerned. It has defined a very, very specific path and a very specific methodology for divorce. And when it is adopted, it is something which sets free both the husband and wife in a way that they can remarry either one another or some other person if they wish to. And this is something of a big blessing because a temporary separation from each other, of course, which might result in a divorce, if the divorce procedure is followed in the right way, can always result in a reunion of the people who have been divorced. And this is something which can be really helpful for the family. So let me start off by some of the important areas or some of the important notions which surround this concept of divorce. So the first and foremost thing that I'd like to discuss here is the fact that it is a common knowledge that people say that women have not been given the right to divorce and only men can divorce. And is this not an act of injustice on the part of the Sharia or the Sharia giver? Because why is it that women should be left in the lurch, so to speak? So here we need to understand that men and women have an equal right to divorce. The only thing is the difference in procedure. So a woman can seek divorce and demand divorce, and a husband has to give divorce. So whenever a husband divorces his wife, obviously this is a right that he has. And when a wife wants to divorce or she wants to set herself free or break away from the marriage bond, she will not pronounce divorce. The methodology is different. She has an equal right, as it is said. What she'll do is she'll demand divorce from the husband. And the husband, of course, if he's a gentleman and if he's a person of nobility and he is also a person of chivalry, he would accede to this demand. And obviously there would be a process in which reconciliation would be tried. And this only happens when this reconciliation fails. So the first misconception that has to be removed is that there is just a difference in methodology of divorce between a wife and a husband. I mean, either one have the right to divorce, equal right to divorce. The only thing is that men, because, or husbands, because they are made the head of the family, because they are in the governing position, the methodology which is prescribed for them is that they can pronounce a single divorce, and then as soon as the iddat period ends, which we will just describe in a little while, the husband and wife are free to go, and I mean, they can go their own separate ways, and they can even come back and marry one another. And if a wife wants this divorce, then she will just obviously go through this process of reconciliation as far as is possible. And then once it is understood or decided that the two cannot reconcile, then all that she needs to do is to demand this divorce from her husband. And as I said, all reasonable husbands should comply. Now, unfortunately, the laws in most Muslim countries, when a woman seeks divorce, are at times not that friendly, and she has to go through a little hassle. But if this law is passed in our Muslim countries, and this is a perfect harmony with the Sharia, and that is that if the woman or the wife, at the time of her marriage, there are certain contractual conditions which the husband and wife can obviously mutually understand and mutually set themselves. So one of the conditions of this marriage would be that if there is a breakup of marriage and if the wife wants to break up the marriage, then she'll give a notice to the husband. And after that notice period, let's say it could be arbitrarily 90 days or 100 days or to some effect, days to some effect, that once this period is over, then the husband will be bound to give divorce come what may, because this would act as the conciliation period in which the spouses would try and come together as far as they can to do away with this discrepancy or this difference of opinion, which has resulted in such a big fissure that it would even go and dismember the institution of marriage itself. So this is all that is needed. That when women would like, or when wives would like to have this divorce done, they would serve a notice. I mean, the notice, of course, is something which is like a personal letter or a little document shared between the husband and wife. And that document, of course, would be a legal document, and that would be something on the basis of which a husband would be legally bound to give divorce. Now, a question that might arise here is that why is this difference? Why can't women also directly divorce, just as men can, or just as husbands can? Well, the reason here is that Islam has actually prescribed a hierarchy of family, and that is that there is the two people who constitute a family, the husband and the wife. For them, it is essential that there is a certain decorum that needs to be followed. The husband has been granted the right of divorce because he is given the status of being the head of the family. So, for reasons that we have already discussed in some of our other talks, is husbands are installed on the position of being the head of the family. So, for the head of the family, the procedure is that he has the right to divorce, and for the person who is his partner, his life partner, the prescribed procedure is that she would have an equal right to divorce. The only thing is she cannot give divorce, but otherwise that would be a situation in which two equal rights would be given, and this could disrupt the family. So instead of causing this disruption, religion tells us that, well, this procedure in which a woman would like to seek divorce or a wife would like to seek divorce is all that is needed, and the husband would then have to comply with this order. Now, the second important thing before we discuss the procedure of divorce, and we are aware of this procedure, is regarding the custody of the minors. So again, the Sharia here has not prescribed any specific methodology or any specific way in which the custody of minors shall take place. So it is left to the discretion of the judge of a family court, or between the husband and wife, even before that, if they can just settle it mutually. And generally, what has to be considered is that the welfare of the child or the children must be kept in mind. Thus, for example, if the children are young, they are very young, they are infants, it is but natural that the woman should be given the custody of the children, and the husband would be given the rights to meet up with the children in a specific on a specific term. And of course, then there is this exception that even if the children are young, they are just infants, but the wife after divorce and after passing through the period, she plans to marry someone else. Then again, a court can, looking at the expediency and the welfare of the child or the children, could give a different directive. So in short, what needs to be understood is that as far as the custody of the minors is concerned, Islam has not laid out any specific procedure. It has left the decision to the circumstances, and the only guiding principle that we can have in this regard is that the welfare of the children should precede everything. And in this regard, of course, if the matter is settled mutually between the husband and wife, then that is the best thing. But if it is not settled and a family court has to interfere, then the guiding principle before the family court is that the custody of the minors would be decided on the basis of the welfare of those minors. Obviously, if the children are of adult age, then they can choose for themselves. So once they are adult, they could choose to live with either parent, or even choose to live independently and not live with any of the parents, depending upon the situation. Now, the third thing in this regard is that, or a third important area that needs to be considered is that divorce, when it is given in rage, when it is given in fury, and people just don't stop at giving a single divorce, they would pronounce 3 or 4 or 5, even 100 times, or even you must have seen that 1,000 times. I mean, this word is pronounced not by actually pronouncing it, but by saying that I divorced you 1,000 times, I divorced you 10,000 times. So this procedure of divorcing one's wife by pronouncing the divorce sentence in more than one, I mean, in a number which is more than one, is absolutely forbidden. And the Prophet actually has made it clear that this is something which is not acceptable. And so therefore, it has to be understood that as far as giving a divorce is concerned, as we shall just learn from the Quran also, the simple way to give divorce is to give one divorce, to give that announcement or pronounce the divorce just once. People generally are confused, they are ill-informed, and they think that unless the divorce is pronounced thrice, unless 3 times you say divorce, or as you can see in rage or in fury, you go even beyond the number 3, then this is not the right way to do it. And a court of law can adjudicate against it. The judge can obviously see what has happened. And in the case of the Prophet Muhammad's own times, we know that there is a very famous case which took place and which was decided by the Prophet himself. So a Sahabi called Rukana ibn Abd Yazid, he actually divorced his wife 3 times. And when the Prophet asked him that, did you really mean to divorce her 3 times? He said, no, I was angry and I'm sorry. I just wanted to divorce her once. So the Prophet actually listened to his intention. He followed his intention and just implemented 1 divorce. So the reason here being that the Quran is explicit. It says in azamut talaq, which means that when you once decide your talaq or divorce, it has to be an azam. It has to be a calculated decision. It cannot be uttered without thinking, in fury or rage. So therefore, if you utter this divorce sentence more than once, it could either be because it's a well calculated decision, obviously then that would be a different thing. But if it is uttered without thinking and without any calculation and just in a rage and a fit of fury, then the intention of the person who gives divorce shall be elicited. So the person would be asked on oath to give or record his statement, or the husband should give a statement that what exactly did you mean? So this could always be the case that a husband says that I didn't even want to give her a single divorce, what to speak of multiple ones. And it was just in a fit of fury, and just I was so angry, and a discussion took place between us, which is very typical, and it just got out of bounds, and I got very angry and annoyed, and I just divorced her, which actually means that he never had that intention in the first place. So if a judge or an arbitrator is reasonably satisfied in this regard, he can easily say, and he can pronounce the fact that not a single divorce has taken place. So divorce which is taken place in rage, and if the person specifies it that he has given it in rage, then a judge has to decide whether it took place at all. So divorces which are given in such a situation, and I'm sure all of you must have seen this, that this is the case, that in such cases, what happens is that because generally divorces are not well planned, they're not well calculated, and people usually utter this word in a fit of anger, that it actually boils down to the fact when people go to the muftis and to scholars to ask whether divorce has taken place, they say yes, it has taken place, without giving due regard to the words of the Quran, which say that the Quran, I mean, explicitly says that it has to be a calculated effort on the part of the husband. It has to be a calculated decision. It should not be in a fit of rage. It should be a well thought of decision. It should be a coolly considered decision. And then, of course, it should take place in a very normal way. But because people are not informed in this, when they utter this in rage, so generally what happens, especially if three divorces are uttered in rage, on one occasion, then the most prominent school of thought, which are the Hanafite school of thought, at least in the subcontinent, because to them, if you give three divorces in single go, they implement it, even if the divorce is given, as I said, in a fit of rage, because there is a narrative which, according to them, says that if something is done, and one of those things is divorce, if it is given in a fit of rage, or even if it is given in a light or in a jestful mood, it would be implemented. Needless to say, that the narrative itself is unfounded. It is not properly ascribed to the Prophet. And the most important thing being that it is even against the Quran. So Quran says that divorce cannot be given in a fit of rage. If it is given in the fit of rage, then the intention of the person who gives it shall be solicited. And if he or she says, and of course the wife needs to corroborate if the parallel statement is also given or taken from her, that yes, my husband was in a fit of rage, then this shall not happen. And today, unfortunately, very unfortunately, we see so many families getting broken, and children going haywire, and children just getting the brunt of it, that because people generally divorce in anger, and the common fatwa in this regard is that divorce has taken place, that the families, I mean, all around us have started to break up simply because of this wrong consideration on the part of our Hanafi scholars, who regard divorce in this situation to have taken place. So the third misconception, so we've just talked about three of them. The first is the right to divorce. We talked about that. The second is the custody of the minors. We talked about that. And now we just talked about if divorce happens in a fit of rage, or if it is given in a way that it is, I mean, very comprehensible, that the person who gave it, the husband who gave it, never even intended a single divorce to have been implemented or taken place. Now we come in the background of this to the procedure for divorce, which is mentioned in the Quran. And this is something which is very important, and this is something that we need to educate ourselves in a very, very specific and a definite way. Obviously, we pray that this never happens with any one of us, but if it does, then we have to be aware of the right procedure, because it's something of a very, very delicate nature. First of all, the Quran suggests that before even pronouncing divorce, I mean, if the husband is convinced that the marriage boat cannot be, I mean, the seas are so rough that the marriage boat cannot simply sail through them, and he has to take a decision, or this could be the decision of the wife as well. And the wife also, I mean, on the one hand, thinks that she cannot put up with the husband because of certain reasons. So either one of them could initiate a divorce, as I just said. The only thing is the difference in procedure. But before that initiation, the Quran says that two arbitrators should be appointed by the family, one from the husband's side and one from the wife's side. So the Quran says, Hakamam min ahlihi wa hakamam min ahliha. So one arbitrator from the husband's side and one arbitrator from the wife's side. And then it says that these arbitrators should sit together, come together, and see what exactly is the reason that is apparent for the cause of this divorce. and they should try to reconcile the two and do the job what they could not have achieved for themselves. Because what happens is that at times there is this communication gap, and when the husband and wife try to resolve it, things get even more out of hand. So the Quran suggests that involve some elders of your family, involve some elders of the society, so that if you're not being able to communicate with your spouse, let this job be done by people who are around you. Maybe they could do something which you were not able to do, and maybe they are the people. If they could do something, they could even stop the marriage from actually breaking. So once this is decided, once this becomes apparent that these arbitrators have failed, failed in the sense that they were not able to reconcile between the two, then the Quran says divorce proceedings can be initiated. So if the husband is the one who's going to initiate, this is the general case, either he'll do it out of his own will or at the request of his wife. But nonetheless, the initiation of divorce has to be from the husband. So what he'll do is that when his wife is not passing through her menstrual cycles, she is in a period of purity, and also that is the period in which the husband and the wife have not had mutual relations, intimate relations. The husband shall pronounce the word divorce just once, and of course call in two witnesses so that it is something which can be on record that now the two have initiated the procedure for divorce. And as soon as he pronounces divorce, the procedure or the decorum which is laid out by the Quran is that the wife should not leave the house of the husband, except, as the Quran says, if she is guilty of open sexual misconduct, like adultery, for example. Only in that case is this allowance that she could leave the house of her husband. Otherwise, this is of paramount importance, that as soon as the word divorce is pronounced by the husband, to initiate divorce, the Quran says that the wife must stay in the same premises. Why? As the Quran says, لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ يُحْرِسُ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ أَمْرًا, which means that if they are living together, in spite of the divorce being pronounced, there's always that chance that if the time which is going to pass between them as a result could slow down things, could make them reflect on the issue, could make them rethink the decision. And maybe this happens that divorce is actually withdrawn. So the Quran says that one, divorce must be pronounced, and in normal circumstances, when the wife is not passing through a menstrual cycle, she is in a period of purity. So three more menstrual cycles should elapse. So as soon as the third menstrual cycle elapses, which is like 90 days, and if the husband has not revoked his divorce during this period, which is called the iddah period, then as soon as the iddah period expires, the wife will be free to go anywhere she would like to go, and the husband would be again free. So both of them, the wife would be free to marry anyone else if she wants to. She's now a free lady, and the husband also, of course, if he wants to marry someone else, he has the right to do so. And they can even marry amongst themselves once again. And that is the reason why the Quran wants people who would like to divorce to just divorce their wives one time by saying one divorce, one sentence of divorce, that I divorce you, not three times, just once, because this would make them eligible for remarrying once the iddah period has passed. For pregnant women, the Quran tells us that the iddah period is until the delivery of the child. So as soon as the child is born, the iddah will finish. And between husband and wife who have had no marital contact, they have not had any sexual intimacy, there is no iddah period. There is no iddah period. And so if you examine these initial statutes, you'll realize how we violate some of them blatantly. Thus, for example, the first thing which happens today when husbands divorce their wives, the first thing that happens is that the wife leaves the house of the husband. She goes away to her own parents, which is the general case, or she starts living alone. Now, this is against the procedure which the Quran has said. It has specifically said, if you pick up Surah Talaq, which is the 65th surah of the Quran, you'll find it at the very beginning. That La yakhrujna, she should not actually go out of the house, nor should the husband turn her out. La tukhrijuhunna wa la yakhrujna. Nor should the husbands do that, nor the wife on her own part should leave the house. As I said, the reason being, Allah yuhdisu ba'da zalika amra, God may make things work once again. And the second thing that obviously we'd have to understand in this regard is that as far as the iddat period is concerned, within the iddat period, the Quran says that the husbands, if they would like to revoke the decision, they have the right to take back and revoke that decision, but this should be within the iddat period. But once the iddat period expires, then obviously that would be the case in which both husband and wife are free from the marriage bond. But within the iddat period, if the husband revokes as a result of any reconciliation, then he can take back his wife. And during this iddat period, the Quran also tells us in Surah Baqarah that if a wife is pregnant, she should not hide her pregnancy, because you see, in those times, it was always possible to hide your pregnancy until the very last stage. It's no longer the case. So today, for example, if it is reasonably ascertained by a doctor's medical report that the wife is not pregnant when the divorce was given, then she will not have to go through any period of iddat, because as the Quran tells us, that the basic reason for passing through this iddat period is that there is no chance of any pregnancy. The Quran does not want this fact that a woman be pregnant, and that should not be known to the husband, and then he should still go on and go through this procedure. So the basic reason for iddat is to determine whether she's pregnant or not. If she's pregnant, then of course that iddat will continue. And if she's not pregnant, so you can clearly see that these 3 menstrual cycles, when they pass, this was the only way in olden times to know whether a lady is pregnant or not, because if she would not be, if she would have a 3rd cycle, this would be a sure sign that she is not pregnant. But today, because we have so many scientific ways, like, for example, reports and tests and ultrasound reports, which can confirm whether a lady is pregnant or not. So if that can be determined even at the very start of divorce, and the wife would like to leave the husband's house and leave him forever and go for someone else, then she has this option if a doctor gives her this certificate. So she doesn't need to wait for 3 menstrual cycles, because this was the procedure which was prescribed when there was no other alternative to know whether the wife is pregnant or not. So this is how the first divorce, or the first instance of divorce, has been mentioned in the Quran. But then the Quran says, "At-talaqu marratan," that this divorce in which you can divorce your wife and take her back during her iddat period can only be a choice for you twice in a single relationship of marriage. So if you've given divorce to your wife and taken back that divorce during that iddat period, this would be one chance that you were given by the Sharia. The Quran says you're given a second chance as well. Thus, for example, in some other time of life, in some other part of your life, something again arose and you thought that, well, things are not getting along and you will still not need to go for a divorce. And that is, I said, a separate occasion, a new occasion. So on the first occasion, the husband divorced and he thought that he would like to take back his wife. Then yes, he can take back his wife. But if he wishes not to take back his wife and the iddat period passes, then she's free to go. And by the way, when she's free to go, the Quran says, at the time of this dispensation, at the time of this departure of your wife, when she has passed through her iddat period, you should give her sufficient money. And the Quran says, bil ma'ruf, whatever is the convention of the society. And if a society even legislates in this regard, if there's a legislation that once she's divorced, then for a certain period of time or a certain amount of money would be given to her until she gets herself settled or she is able to marry someone else, then this would be exactly in consonance with the Quran says, which means for divorced women, there has to be some provision according to the conventions of the society. So divorced women should not feel that they have been left high and dry. As I said, under this circumstance, a ruling can be made and a sufficient amount of money for a sufficient period of time could be adjudicated by a court of law, if not by the husband himself. So coming back to the other part, that if the husband revokes the decision within the iddat period, the Quran says that now you have one more chance in life. So on a second occasion, if the same situation arises, and because of any difference of opinion, the husbands think that once again divorce is the only option left, then he can once again pronounce one divorce, and then again the same procedure would be adopted, and if the iddat period expires, then the wife would be free to go. She could marry anyone. And if within the iddat period, the husband for the second time now also decides that he's going to revoke his decision, the Quran says that this is also an option given to you. So the words at-talaqu barratan, which means this divorce can take place twice, which means that twice during a single marriage relationship, you can divorce your wife, obviously implying on different occasions. Once you can divorce her and take it back within the iddat period. Then on some other occasion, if the same situation arises in which you have to divorce her, again you can give divorce and you still have a chance to take her back. But if you divorce her for a third time in some other time of your life, then the Quran says that this is, you cannot take her back in the iddat period. Then once the iddat period passes, she is free to go, and you are free to go. And now if you plan to remarry, because on the first two occasions, obviously, you could have remarried easily. And within the iddat period also, there was no need to remarry. But within the iddat period, what happened was that the husband just needed to revoke his divorce, and the wife would automatically stand as his wife. Now, if once again on the third occasion, this chance arises that the husband divorces her, then the Quran says that the wife is permanently separated once the iddat period passes. And now, if the two have to marry again, then the woman has to marry someone else. If she thinks that she needs to marry someone else, not out of some planned strategy, as is generally the case, in most parts, in many countries, that people think that the Quran's directive is that she must marry someone else, and the subterfuge that they adopt is that the someone else marries her for one night and then divorces her the next day, so that she can marry the first husband. So the procedure actually is in total mockery of the Quran. The Quran says that out of naturally arisen circumstances, if the third divorce takes place, the wife will marry someone else. And then out of naturally arisen circumstances, if that husband by chance also divorces his wife, which was the wife of the first husband, now she can come back and marry the first husband. But now today what happens is that out of a planned strategy, generally after the third divorce, people they spend one night. Women, they spend one night with a person who has to spend one night with her, and then there is another condition which is inserted, or which is interjected here, and that is they must have sexual intercourse in that one night, because our jurists think that there is a hadith or recommendation from the Prophet that when this third divorce takes place, then it is only, it can only be, the wife can only be eligible to marry the first husband that she spends time with some other person and has intercourse with that person, and then that person divorces that wife and she comes back to the first husband. And because of this fact that this is done under a planned strategy, this whole procedure is called halala. And it is one of the most shameful things that has happened to Islam and to Sharia, and it is a stigma on the face of the Sharia. And on top of that, our jurists, they also actually quote a hadith of the Prophet which says, "La'anallahu al-muhallil wa muhallil lahu." A person who commits halala and a person who is responsible for that, God has cursed them. So this is what they say, but they still pass through this procedure. The Quran has not at all obligated any such thing. All that the Quran says is that men, they are eligible to marry the wife if they divorce them a third time on 3 separate occasions, a third time also. Then she can come back to him once she marries someone else, and out of naturally arisen circumstances, that husband divorces her, and now she can come back. But not on the basis of a planned strategy, which is generally done, that the husband Unfortunately, when he divorces her for the third time, or in our own society, the third time does not even happen. But what happens is that three divorces are given in one go. So what happens is that because this divorce is implemented, and now the husband and wife want to reconcile, so these our muftis, they tell them that they have to spend time one night with a halala mufti, and he is going to have intercourse with that lady, and then she will become allowable for the first husband. This is, as I said, something which has been misunderstood from a narrative of the Prophet. If you would ask the question, I'll answer what exactly that narrative was. But for all intents and purposes, as far as the Quran is concerned, no such condition has been imposed. The Quran tells us that it has to be a naturally laid down circumstance that should result in that second divorce, and then that lady would come and, if she wants, she can come and marry the first husband. So this is something that I would wanted to share regarding the procedure of divorce. Unfortunately, it is fraught with so many misconceptions that every day we see houses and families being broken up because people are ill-informed, they are ignorant of the procedure of divorce, and at the same time, what stimulates this breakage of marriage even further is the attitude, or I would say the opinion of our jurists, of our Hanafi jurists in particular, in which they regard divorce which has taken place in anger to be equally applicable, and which is in totally contradistinction to what the Prophet himself did. As I said earlier on, he asked the intent of a person. So today, the way to go about such a procedure in which people give divorce in rage, or they are ill-informed, it is essential that you record a statement of both the individuals, of the husband and the wife, and you ask the husband on oath whether he ever wanted to divorce, or he wanted to divorce her just once, or what exactly was his intention, and that intention should be implemented. Similarly, the wife's statement should also be recorded so that the husband's statement can either be corroborated or refuted, and then the decision should be taken. But simply implementing divorce on the basis of the fact that it was an uncalculated, unplanned thing that just on the spur of the moment came in the mind of a husband, and therefore it ended up in the breakage of the marriage. It is absolutely, it is baseless. It is something which is heartrending, because as we can see, it continues to happen around us every now and then. So I will end my talk here, and my purpose here was to try and highlight the procedure of divorce which the Quran has laid down, and it is a very simple procedure. It is no complication about it if you follow it. Yes, of course, all these major decisions which are to be taken, the Quran tells us that witnesses must be called in at the time of divorce, or at the time of taking back, or at the time of making this decision that you are, finally parting ways. So all these important occasions, they should be testified, or they should be known before some witnesses, so that if there is some sort of dispute that takes place, that can also be resolved by those witnesses. So I'm now ready to, if you have any questions regarding this issue. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad, and my salam to all. Dr. Shehzad, thank you so much for enlightening us with the pertinent topic. We have a number of raised hands, so without further ado, we can start taking up questions. But just a quick reminder to all the participants that please ask your topic-related questions in the first round, and then we'll take the off-topic questions later on, provided that we have time to address them as well. So, Maya Majid, please unmute your mic.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad Saleem Saab. I have a question related divorce, that equally husband and a wife equally they have been given the right to divorce. But my main question is, if a woman wants a divorce from her husband, can she claim which we call meher from her husband and other belong which she has received from her husband, or which she has given to her husband? Can she claim such kind of things if she wants a divorce from her husband?
As far as meher is concerned, whether the divorce is going to take place, it's not going to take place, it is the right of the wife as soon as they got married. So it is in the fitness of things that as soon as the couple had gotten married, the meher should have been paid by the husband to the wife, and it should not have been deferred unless because of very specific circumstances. And at the time of divorce, nothing can be taken back from meher as far as the husband is concerned. This is also a big misconception that at the time of parting of ways, generally husbands also demand that the wife should return the meher. This is absolutely wrong and against the Quran. The Quran tells us that the meher, once it has been given, it is the right of the wife. Yes, there are some other stipulations, and one of them is that the gifts which are given by the husband, other than the meher, for example, if might have gifted a house or maybe some other things, then the Quran says that there is one exception, and that is if the husband is also willing to give divorce and the wife is also wanting to separate from the husband. But the only thing which is stopping the husband from divorcing the wife is that he would think that he's gifted so much to the wife that if he divorces her, then he would lose a lot of assets or money. Then the Quran tells us that yes, just to complete divorce, the wife can take back some of can give back some of the gifts that she has been given by the husband. But as I said, this just relates to the gifts. And that too, in this specific situation in which the divorce has simply not taken place because the husband is hesitant in giving divorce because he has gifted a lot of wealth to the wife. But as I said, this just relates to the gifts because the question you have asked is specifically about meher. So I'd like to make this clear once again that no amount of meher can be reclaimed by the husband once it was given and should have been given earlier on. And if it was not given earlier on, then at the time of the parting of ways, it has to be dispensed with. It can never be returned and it should not be returned, and the husband has no right to claim it.
In both situations?
Yes, in both situations.
Whether husband wants to divorce her or
yes, in both situations. Whether she seeks divorce or whether he divorces, in both situations, meher is a right of the wife at the time of marriage. So that is something which should have taken place at the time of marriage. And if it has not taken place, it should be done immediately as soon as they realize it. It can never be taken back.
Thank you. Up next, Rafia Khwaja, please go ahead.
Well, Dr. Shehzad, I want to ask you that in the Nikah Nama, a woman can stipulate that in case she wants a divorce, there should be a period of, say, 3 months, and the husband would have to agree that in that 3 months course, the divorce would, after that, it would take place. This
Right.
was one. Secondly, a very close relative, young relative of mine, got married. Her husband would not, first of all, they were both working and earning, and he wanted to divorce her, and he went to their joint account and cleaned the money out because they were fighting. And secondly, he and his parents both refused the divorce until she returned everything which was given to her in her marriage. And the meher, the jewelry, the clothes, everything. And he said that unless you return everything, if the parents stood their grounds and said,
Right.
no divorce will take place unless all this is returned. And the third, I wanted to ask you, sorry, you said that if in the period, if the wife wants to come back, she doesn't need to do a nikah. She can just automatically twice come back.
Right.
Yeah,
That is correct.
absolutely.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
That she can come back twice if the divorce is given on 2 separate occasions. This is the right that she has on those 2 occasions. But if this happens for the 3rd time, then, as I said, a different procedure has to be followed.
So the 3 months period you agreed can be written. And what about all these things that were given in the marriage?
So, as I said, all the things which belong to the category of meher cannot be returned in any case. But in the case of, let's say, gifts which are other than meher, the Quran says that one exception in which the husband can take back some of the gifts is that the only thing which is stopping him from divorcing the wife is that he thinks that if he divorces her, then because of the fact that he has gifted a lot of money to her or assets to her, he will jointly lose them. And the wife also thinks that, well, divorce, I mean, she's also interested in divorce and the husband is also interested in divorce. And the only thing that is stopping the husband from divorcing her is his reluctance, because if he divorces her, then a lot of assets would just go out of his hand. So on such occasions, if there is a compromise in which the wife says, okay, how many assets do you want back? I'll just return some of the assets so that if you want that you can take them back, and then instead of being reluctant, you just divorce me. So this is just one specific case, not the fact that in every khula or in every divorce which is sought by the woman, all the things that have to be returned that were gifted to him. So let me make this distinction that meher in no circumstances can be demanded, but gifts can be demanded by the husband. But yet, as I said, only in that situation when both are agreed towards a divorce, and the only thing which is stopping the husband from divorcing his wife is that he knows that he has gifted so much amount to his wife that if she goes away, she'll take those things along. So that is an exception.
Shehzad Sahab, in this case, meher was diamond jewelry, a diamond ring, and his parents, and he says, well, these were very expensive things.
That doesn't matter. As I said, meher, whether he's gifted an aeroplane or an island, anything, meher is something which is the right of the wife. He has absolutely no right to reclaim it. He has to think twice before he gives the meher. But once he has given it, he has given it. It cannot be taken back.
Because in this case, she had to return everything to the parents.
Because this is a mockery of the law. This is unfortunately the law supporting the husband in this case, and this is how khula generally takes place in many Eastern societies, that she has to return the meher. But as I said, the Quran is absolutely explicit that this return of gifts is not talking about meher. I mean, meher is the right of the wife per se. And the Quran is only talking about the gifts that have been given to her.
And he even took her money, which was her earnings. So
as I said, this is an unfortunate thing that has happened. I mean, the Sharia in no way can condone this.
बहुत शुक्रिया.
Thank you. Next in queue is Ghasia Khan. Ghasia, unmute your mic and please ask a question.
सर मैं ये पूछना चाह रही थी कि हमारे इस रिश्ते को अल्लाह ताला की तरफ से इतनी सहूलतें देना समझ नहीं आता. एक डिवोर्स की तक अगर बात जाती है हमारे माशरे में तो ये आम हालात में नहीं जाती, खासकर देहाती अगर माहौल भी देखा जाए. आखिरी हद हो जाती है, औरत सहती रहती है या मर्द भी बेशक दोनों ही तरफ, लेकिन ज्यादातर देखने में औरत की तरफ आता है. 3 माह शोहर के साथ वक्त गुजारना, ये मुझे समझ नहीं आता.
नहीं तो वो अगर नहीं गुजारना चाहती तो ना गुजारे. देखिए, ये कोई जरूरी तो नहीं है कि वक्त गुजारे. अगर शौहर जो है वो उसको वापस ले लेता है, लेकिन वो नहीं रहना चाहती, तो वो कह सकती है जी कि मैं आपके साथ नहीं रहना चाहती, और वो उससे कहेगी कि आप मुझे तलाक दे दें. वो तलाक का प्रोसीजर जो है वो इनिशिएट हो जाएगा उस क्लॉज के मुताबिक जो मैंने शुरू में कहा. तो ये जरूरी तो नहीं है कि अगर हस्बैंड वापस ले ले तो वो भी राजी हो जाए. वो उस मौके पे राजी हो जाएगी, लेकिन जब वो खत्म हो जाएगा मामला जिसमें वो एक प्रोसीजर खत्म हुआ है, तो वो उसके फौरन बाद अप्लाई कर देगी, अपने हस्बैंड को कहेगी कि जी हमारा मुआहदा हुआ था कि अगर मैं आपसे डिवोर्स मांगूंगी तो आपने 90 दिन के अंदर मुझे देनी है, तो मैं मांग रही हूँ. तो ये तो सिर्फ राइट दोनों के पास है.
बिल्कुल सर, लेकिन मैं ये पूछ रही हूँ कि वो 3 माह डिवोर्स के बाद के 3 माह वो शोहर के साथ ही रहना जरूरी क्यों है? ये
कुरान ने कहा है ना, और उसकी वजह भी बताई है कि शायद इसके नतीजे में दोनों के दिल आपस में फिर से मिल जाएं. कुरान ने सूरह तलाक में कहा है कि लअल्लाह युहदिसु बअद ज़ालिका अमरा. हो सकता है इसके नतीजे में कि वो एक घर में रहें, तो जो दिल आपस में इकट्ठे हो गए थे, जो दिल आपस में दूर हो गए थे, हो सकता है कि वो एक मरतबा फिर मिल जाए. ये तो कुरान मजीद ने तलाक को रोकने का और शादी को एक मरतबा फिर कामयाब बनाने का एक तरीका सजेस्ट किया है.
बिल्कुल सर, लेकिन हमारा मुआशरा जो इस्लामिक तो नहीं है बिल्कुल कि एक दूसरे का ख्याल करता होगा, उसकी सोच का ख्याल करता होगा, ऐसा तो है ही नहीं.
देखिए, हम अपने इस वक्त माशरे की तो बात नहीं ना कर रहे. माशरे में तो बेतहाशा प्रैक्टिसेस ऐसी हैं जो तलाक के अलावा भी हैं, जो कुरान के बताए हुए रस्ते से मुताबिक नहीं हो रही हैं. हम तो ये देख रहे हैं और समझ रहे हैं कि देखें कुरान मजीद ने कितना मुनसिफाना तरीका बताया है कि ना तो ये कहा है कि जब जैसे कि जिस वक्त जो क्रिश्चियन सोसाइटी है उसके अंदर तलाक या तो एक वजह ये होती है कि बीवी या शौहर में से कोई एक जो है वो उसके नाजायज ताल्लुकात अगर हो जाएं तो इस बुनियाद पे वो कहते हैं तलाक हो सकती है. यानी उनके यहाँ इस एक या 2 वजूहात है, वरना आप सारी जिंदगी के लिए वो बंधन बंध गया है. उन्होंने जब हज़रत मसीह का जुमला पढ़ा कि वो जो रिश्ते आसमान पे बनाए जाते हैं वो आसमान ही पे तोड़े जा सकते हैं, दुनिया में नहीं तोड़े जा सकते। तो इस मतलब उसका उन्होंने ये समझा कि शादी जो है वो सिवाय मैरिटल अनफेथफुलनेस के या एक आदि और रीजन है उसके अलावा वो खत्म ही नहीं की जा सकती। तो चुनाचे उनके यहाँ एक गैर फितरी बंदिश वो बन गई कि अगर आप दोनों मियाँ बीवी चाहते भी हैं, और वजह ये नहीं है कि वो आप एक दूसरे के साथ फेथफुल नहीं रहे, बल्कि नहीं गुजर बसर हो सकी है, मिजाज फर्क है और बहुत ही शाइस्तगी के साथ अलग होना चाहते हैं। तो कुरान ने तो बहुत एक मुनसिफाना और बहुत एक फितरी तरीका बताया है। अब हम मुसलमान कुरान को चूंकि फॉलो नहीं करते, ना तलाक के मामले में, ना निकाह के मामले में, ना महर के मामले में, ना पैदाइश के मामले में, ना वफात के मामले में, ना जिंदगी गुजारने के मामले में, तो हमें तो फिर कंप्लेन ही ना करना चाहिए।
बिल्कुल सर, मैं जो पॉइंट समझना चाह रही थी वो यही थी कि हालात के हिसाब से अगर औरत मतलब प्रेगनेंसी में पता चल जाता है आज की तहकीक से, तो एक अपॉर्चुनिटी दे रहा है ना हालात को इस्लाम भी, बेशक मतलब मकसद समझा गया पीछे। तो अभी सिचुएशन ऐसी है कि औरत सॉरी नहीं रहना चाहती शौहर के साथ, तलाक के बाद 3 माह नहीं गुजारना चाहती, तो वो नहीं गुजारेगी। हालात ही ऐसे हैं कि नहीं रहा जा सकता उसके साथ। मैं सिचुएशन के हिसाब से पूछ रही हूँ कि ये गुंजाइश निकल सकती है।
नहीं देखिए, ये तो आप कुरान मजीद ने ये हुक्म दोनों को दिया है। मर्द को मुखातिब करके कहा है कि ला तुखरिजूहुन्ना, तुमने निकालना नहीं है, और खातून को कहा है कि ला यखरुजना, तुमने निकलना नहीं है। तो ये तो दोनों बाहमी फैसला करेंगे ना। अगर कोई एक उसमें से फैसला इसके मुखालिफ करेगा तो कुरान क्या कह सकता है? कुरान ने तो अपना तरीका बता रहा है, बाकी तो आजादी है आपको। तो वो दोनों को कह रहा है, और कह रहा है कि देखो शादी के कितनी इंपॉर्टेंट एक इंस्टीट्यूशन है, क्योंकि इसमें औलाद इन्वॉल्व हो जाती है, कि अब भी जब तुमने तलाक दे दी है तो इसको एक ट्रायल से गुजारो। तलाक को फाइनलाइज वो करता है 3 महीने के बाद जाके, इसी वजह से, ताकि अगर कोई जरा सा भी इम्कान है दोबारा आपस में मिलने का तो उसको एक्सप्लोर करके किया जा सके।
बहुत शुक्रिया समझ लीजिए, बहुत।
Thank you. Up next is Asif Ali. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. My
Right.
question is related to the topic is that usually where we are living in US, the criticism from the Christian jurisprudence is that there is no, or not from Christian jurisprudence, from over here in US is that whenever there is a divorce, there is a split of 50% of the property between women and men. So basically, in that way, this society has created kind of a financial stability for a woman. In our society, or in our Sharia, it is there is as such no long-term financial stability provided to the woman in case if there is a divorce happens. So what happens is that usually the women who are considered to be kind of a boss and subordinate relationship, or in a subordinate relationship, and the man is a boss, then eventually she doesn't go into that path because she knows that there is no financial stability even if after take a divorce from this man. So eventually they drag on. So the drag on of the relationship even creates a lot of issues. So the question is that does Sharia did not provide any financial stability to the woman in case she take the divorce from the man in our Islam?
I think I just answered this question during my talk. It's the answer is that the Quran says walil mutallaqatu mata'un bil ma'ruf. Walil mutallaqati mata'un bil ma'ruf, which means that divorced women should be provided by the husband according to the conventions of the society, which means that at the time of divorce, a court of law can adjudicate that as long as she does not marry, or if she doesn't have the proper income, if she's not financially stable, if she has any other problem, then the husband would be bound to give that help to the woman until she is able to do so. But as far as the Western societies is concerned, look at what is happening there. Simply because of the fact that the assets have to be distributed half and half between the husband and wife, what happens is that either they don't even get married in the first place because they know if divorce is going to take place, then the assets are going to be split up, or they, in spite of wanting to divorce, and in spite of having a lot of differences and a lot of bad blood between them, they don't divorce because, I mean, the husband would say that, well, if this happens, then he'll lose half the money. And the wife says, well, if she's the owner and she's the larger owner, then she'll lose half the money. So what I think that is more unnatural, that simply because of a law that for life you have to split up equally. Either people don't get married as a result of this law, or if they are married, they are not willing to break up, even if breaking up is the right solution. So I think instead of this solution, which is provided by the Western society, what Islam has provided is much more practical, and it is much more something which can be easily borne out by both the spouses. So the Quran has said that as far as this provision is concerned, it can be legislated, and if the wife is not able to economically stabilize herself until the time she is able to, then the husband is liable to support her, not to split the property, because splitting the property is, I mean, is against, I mean, basic ownership rights. If you've bought something for yourself out of your own money, or maybe joint money, and you're owning that, so I mean, ownership itself is something which is indivisible, and unless you are freely when you're freely consenting to give something to your partner, why should it be forced upon you? So I think it also infringes upon ownership rights. But in this case, this financial stability, as you just said, is provided by the stipulation in which a husband could be, I mean, he could be obligated to support the wife after divorce till the time she's able to stand on her feet.
So in that case, we can say that the financial stability has to be decided through legislation.
Yeah. Yes, I mean that has to be decided through the legislation, because you see the Quran has left it to the society. It has given this golden rule, because you see in some societies this would not be needed, because I mean, women are always they're professional women in most societies, and they would say that, okay, fine, I don't need any help, I'm already financially stable. In other societies it might be that it's against her maybe self-esteem, and in still other societies she would still accept. So you see all kinds of situations are there. So the Quran has just given this guideline that that those who are divorced, for them are whatever is according to the conventions of the society. So in the absence of any convention, a legislation can be made so that women or when wives get divorced and they are not left high and dry simply because I mean, they'll become economically unstable and either become dependent on their parents or their siblings, and as a result would have no place to go, and as a result they are forced to drag on with the husband in spite of the fact that there is absolutely no question left that this marriage is not going to work.
Because in the Western society, the legal point of view is that the man is not a breadwinner. So basically, they created the asset in an equal partnership. So basically, when they say that, okay, when you get divorced, basically you have to split, because even if the woman is not working, but she contributing to the creation of those assets. So in any case, those assets should be divided. So some people.
Again, I understand the point, and I know because I've lived there as well. So you see, what happens is that this is always not that just. At times, the amount contributed by the husband is very meager. At times, it is very meager by the wife. It's not always 50-50. I think what has happened is that the divorce stipulation has been made without considering the fact how much contribution each is making during the marriage period itself. So all that they think of is the split, but you can always think of so many different options that at times husbands they don't contribute or anything. At times the wives don't contribute. At times it is, I mean, substantial. At times it is non-substantial. So there's so many different things. So as you rightly said, that because husband is not regarded as the breadwinner of the family, and it's like a mutual settlement that goes on. So therefore they think that as a result of this mutual settlement, because they're equal, so the assets that have to be split equally as well. And I said that this is unfair, because a person who has bought those assets out of the money that he might have earned himself, what right is the wife or for that matter the husband have to have a ownership of those rights, of those assets which are bought by someone from his own money or her own money?
Thank you. Next in queue is Saima Khan. Saima, please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम टू एवरीवन। मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि आजकल जो है वो लोग शादियां करने के लिए तो पहले इस्तेमाल करते थे इस्तिखारा, अब नाउ दे आर यूजिंग द इस्तिखारा फॉर डिवोर्सिंग वुमेन। तो इसके बारे में इस्लाम क्या कहता है? क्या नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने कभी लोगों को इस तरह से डिसीजन लेने के लिए इनकरेज किया या उनको गाइड किया? थैंक यू।
देखिए, इस्तिखारा का जो है एक जनरल मिसकंसेप्शन है कि लोगों का ख्याल है कि इस्तिखारा कोई अल्लाह ताला के साथ एक हॉटलाइन है ادھر آپ نے وہ استخارے کی دعا پڑھی اور ادھر اللہ تعالیٰ کا جواب خواب میں آ گیا. یہ غلط فہمی اصل میں یہاں سے پیدا ہوئی ہے. استخارہ کا لفظی مطلب ہے خیر طلب کرنا، اللہ تعالیٰ سے خیر طلب کرنا. تو جو استخارے کی دعا کے الفاظ اگر آپ پڑھیں گی تو آپ کو نظر آئے گا کہ اس کے الفاظ ہی یہی ہیں کہ اللہ تعالیٰ میرے لیے فیصلہ کرنا مشکل ہو گیا ہے، میں نے ساری جو عقل اور پریکٹس اور ایکسپیرینس استعمال کر لیا ہے اور مجھے ایکول آپشن نظر آ رہی ہیں، دونوں میں برابر کی چیز نظر آ رہی ہے. تو آپ جس چیز میں میرے لیے، میری دنیا کے لیے، میری آخرت کے لیے بہتری دیکھیں، مجھے اس طرف موڑ دیں. یہ دعا ہے. دعا ہوتی ہے. آپ دیکھیے عام دنیا میں جب آپ دعا کرتے ہیں تو کیا ہوتا ہے؟ کبھی دعا قبول ہو جاتی ہے، کبھی قبول نہیں ہوتی، کبھی اس کو ڈیفر کر دیا جاتا ہے کہ آئندہ کسی موقع پہ اجر مل جائے گا یا اس کو قبول کر لیا جائے گا. ایسا ہی ہوتا ہے نا. تو اس کا بھی ایسا ہی ہے. یہ باقی دعاؤں سے کوئی مختلف دعا ہے نہیں. تو چنانچہ اس کا تقاضا یہ ہے کہ اگر آپ نے شادی کرنی ہے، آپ نے کوئی نوکری کرنی ہے، آپ نے طلاق دینی ہے، دنیا کا کوئی بڑا فیصلہ کرنا ہے، پہلے تو عقل استعمال کیجئے، اپنے تجربے کو استعمال کیجئے، دیکھیں کہ آپ کے پاس ڈیٹا کیا ہے. اگر آپ کہیں پھنس جاتے ہیں، آپ کے پاس آپشنز جو ہیں 50-50 ہیں یا آپ بہت قریب ہیں اور آپ فیصلہ نہیں کر پا رہے، یعنی آپ نے اپنی عقل اور سمجھ استعمال کر لی اور اب آپ فیصلہ نہیں کر پا رہے، تو اب آپ دعا کرتے ہیں. تو اللہ تعالیٰ کہتے ہیں پہلے اپنا کام کر لو. یہ تو نہیں کہ آپ نے اپنا کام تو کیا نہیں. یعنی مثال کے طور پہ عقل تو بالکل یہ کہہ رہی ہے کہ آپ کو نہیں چھوڑنا چاہیے اپنے ہسبینڈ کو، یا یہ کہہ رہی ہے کہ چھوڑنا چاہیے، یعنی عقلاً آپ کو اور تجربہ آپ کو یہ کہہ رہا ہے. لیکن استخارہ آپ نے کیا، اور استخارہ چونکہ ایک باطنی کیفیت کو سامنے رکھ کے کیا جاتا ہے کہ میں ادھر استخارہ کروں گا تو مجھے خواب آ جائے گا. دیکھیں خواب کی نفسیات یہ ہے کہ جب آپ سوچتے ہیں اس چیز کے بارے میں بہت زیادہ تو واقعی آنا شروع ہو جاتے ہیں، اور یہ نفس کی واردات ہوتی ہے. نفس جو ہے بعض دفعہ کچھ سوچ رہا ہوتا ہے، آپ جب بہت کچھ سوچتے ہیں تو وہی چیز آپ کو خواب میں بھی آ جاتی ہے. تو یہ کوئی جنتر منتر نہیں ہے کہ ادھر آپ نے دعا کی اور ادھر خواب آ گیا. خواب تو اصل میں ایسی آپ سمجھ لیجئے کہ اللہ تعالیٰ کی طرف سے بعض بشارت ہوتی ہے کہ ہاں یہ بشارت کا مطلب ہے گلیڈ ٹائڈنگز، کہ ہاں اگر آپ نے کوئی چیز دیکھ لی ہے تو آپ کہتے ہیں کہ ہاں یہ میرے لیے اچھی ہے. لیکن وہ کب پتہ چلتا ہے کہ اچھی ہے؟ جب وہ ہو جاتی ہے، جب وہ آپ ہائنڈ سائڈ میں کہتے ہیں کہ ہاں یہ بالکل ٹھیک تھی. تو پہلے اللہ میاں کوئی وحی تو نہیں بھیجتے انسان کو کہ آپ کو جو خواب آئے گا وہ لازماً ٹھیک ہوگا. اچھا آپ جب ایک چیز کے بارے میں غور و فکر کرتے ہیں تو بعض دفعہ ایسا ہوتا ہے کہ خواب بھی آ جاتا ہے، لیکن بھی ہے وہ تب آتا ہے کہ آپ محسوس کرتے ہیں کہ بھئی یہ ازدیاد کا باعث بن رہا ہے، آپ ایک طرف جا رہے ہیں تو آپ کو سمجھ میں آ رہی ہے. بعض دفعہ ایسا ہوتا ہے کہ فیصلہ کرنے میں جو آپ کو دقت ہو رہی ہوتی ہے، کوئی شخص سے آپ کی بات ہوتی ہے، اچانک آپ کو خیال آتا ہے کہ ہاں یہ ایسپیکٹ میں نے نہیں دیکھا تھا، تو وہ شخص باعث بن جاتا ہے ایک نئے خیال کو ڈالنے کا آپ کے اندر. بعض دفعہ اللہ تعالیٰ حالات پیدا کر دیتے ہیں. تو دعا کو قبول کرنے کے مختلف حالات ہیں اور کبھی کچھ بھی نہیں ہوتا. جیسے عام دعاؤں میں کبھی کچھ نہیں ہوتا، ضروری تو نہیں ہے کہ ہر دعا کو اللہ تعالیٰ آنسر کرے. تو کبھی ایسا بھی ہوتا ہے کہ دعا استخارے کی آپ کرتے ہیں کچھ نہیں ہوتا. تو استخارے کو دوسری دعاؤں سے مختلف نہیں سمجھنا چاہیے. جیسے مختلف دعاؤں کا معاملہ ہے کہ وہاں پہلے آپ کو اپنے تجربے اور عقل سے جو کچھ آپ کا صاف سے تقاضا ہے اس کو پورا کریں، اس کے بعد ہاتھ اٹھائیں اور اس کے بعد یہ سوچیں کہ اگر میں نے ہاتھ اٹھایا ہے تو یہ بس اللہ کے حضور درخواست ہے. ہو سکتا ہے اس درخواست کا جواب آ جائے، ہو سکتا ہے نہ آئے، اور ہو سکتا ہے جب جواب آئے تو میں اس کو سمجھ لوں، اور یہ بھی ہو سکتا ہے کہ وہ اس کی شکل ایسی ہو کہ جو میں بعد میں مجھے سمجھ میں آئے. تو یہ سارے آلٹرنیٹیوز موجود ہیں. یہ ہمارے ہاں انفارچونیٹلی استخارے کو وہ حیثیت دے دی گئی ہے کہ جیسے یہ ایک کاروبار بن گیا ہے، لوگوں کو پیسے دے کے استخارہ کرایا جاتا ہے، اور اس کے بعد پھر ہم دیکھتے ہیں کہ کتنے ہی جگہوں پہ ایسا ہوتا ہے کہ آپ کو جو کہا جاتا ہے اس کے مطابق وہ کام ہوتا نہیں ہے اور پھر ایک فساد پیدا ہوتا ہے. تو اس وجہ سے اس کو ذہن میں رکھیے، یہ استخارہ یا استخیرہ کا جو فیل ہے یہ اصل میں صرف یہ بتا رہا ہے کہ آپ نے اللہ تعالیٰ سے اپنی عجز کا اعتراف کرتے ہوئے کہ میں یہ کام نہیں کر پا رہا، سمجھ نہیں پا رہا، مجھے آپ کی رہنمائی چاہیے.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, for a wonderful answer. Akram Bhatti, please unmute your mic.
بچوں کے بارے میں اللہ کی طرف سے کیا رہنمائی ہے؟ اگر ڈیپینڈنٹ بچے ہوں تو سب سے بڑا تو مسئلہ ان کا بنتا ہے، اور اس پہ جھگڑے بھی اس پہ ہوتے ہیں، اور ظاہر ہے کہ ماں کے
آپ ڈیورس کی بات کر رہے ہیں، ڈیورس کے تناظر میں
ڈیورس کے معاملے میں بات کر رہا ہوں.
دیکھیں اس کے بارے میں جیسے میں نے شروع میں کہا نا کہ مذہب نے کوئی چیز پرسکرائب نہیں کی ہے، صرف جو چیز رہنمائی میں ملتی ہے جو فطری رہنمائی بھی ہے کہ بچوں کی جو ویلفیئر ہے، ان کی جو بہتری ہے وہ سامنے رکھنی ہے. جب چھوٹے بچے ہوتے ہیں تو اور نوعیت ہوتی ہے، بڑے ہو جاتے ہیں تو اور نوعیت ہوتی ہے، ان کے پاس چوائس ہوتی ہے. تو اگر یہ مسئلہ کورٹ آف لاء تک چلا جاتا ہے تو اللہ تعالیٰ ہی چاہتے ہیں کہ جو جج فیصلہ کرے وہ بچوں کی بہتری کو سامنے رکھ کے فیصلہ کرے. اس وجہ سے جو بھی بچوں کی جس زمانے بہتری ہے، دیکھیں کامن سینس تو یہ ہے کہ جب بچے چھوٹے ہوتے ہیں، دودھ پیتے ہیں یا ذرا بڑے ہیں تو ماں ہی کے پاس وہ رہیں گے. لیکن فرض کیجئے کہ ماں ہی آمادہ نہیں ان کو رکھنے پہ، یا ماں نے کسی اور سے شادی کرنے کا سوچا ہوا ہے، تو اب بعض دفعہ وہ بچے جو حالانکہ چھوٹے ہوتے ہیں لیکن ماں ہی چھوڑ کے چلی جاتی ہے یا نہیں چاہتی اپنے پاس رکھنا، تو اب یہ ایک مشکل آ جاتی ہے. تو اس وجہ سے مختلف حالات پیدا ہو سکتے ہیں. تو ایک فیملی جج کو یہ اختیار دیا گیا ہے کہ وہ بچوں کی بہتری کو سامنے رکھ کے رائے قائم کرے.
Thank you. Wasya Khan, you may go ahead.
سر میں یہ پوچھنا چاہ رہی تھی کہ حضرت ابراہیم علیہ السلام کو جس آگ میں ڈالا گیا تھا کیا وہ یہ حقیقی آگ ہی تھی؟ یہ میں جاننا چاہ رہی تھی.
بالکل حقیقی آگ تھی. قرآن سے معلوم ہوتا ہے کہ وہ آگ ہی میں ڈالے گئے تھے اور آگ ان پہ ان کے لیے ٹھنڈی کر دی گئی تھی.
یہ ایک پرویز صاحب کا ایک فرقہ ٹائپ کچھ بنا ہوا، ان سے میری بات ہوئی تو انہوں نے کہا کہ خدا اپنی سنت کے خلاف نہیں جاتا، تو وہ آگ ان کے بغض تھے نہ کہ وہ حقیقی آگ تھی. اس طرح کا کوئی
عربی زبان میں تو ایسی کوئی گنجائش نہیں. دیکھیے اللہ تعالیٰ اپنے قانون کے خلاف نہیں جاتا، یہ کہاں لکھا ہوا ہے؟ اللہ تعالیٰ جو بہت سارے معجزات پریزنٹ کرتے ہیں وہاں قوانین کے خلاف ہی معاملہ ہو رہا ہوتا ہے. اپنے پیغمبروں کو بچا لے جاتے ہیں. بعض دفعہ میراکلسلی لوگ جو ہیں وہ بچ جاتے ہیں. بہت بڑا حادثہ ہوتا ہے، چھت سے لوگ نیچے گرتے ہیں. ہمیشہ تو نہیں مرتے. کتنی بڑے ایسے واقعات ہیں کہ چوتھی یا پانچویں منزل سے گرا اور عقل تو یہ کہتی تھی کہ اس کو بچنا نہیں چاہیے، لیکن ایک معجزہ ہو جاتا ہے، وہ بچ جاتا ہے. بعض دفعہ ڈاکٹر جواب دے دیتے ہیں کسی پیشنٹ کے بارے میں، وہ پیشنٹ جو ہے وہ بچ جاتا ہے اور کئی سال زندہ رہتا ہے. تو یہ کہنا کہ اللہ تعالیٰ اپنے قانون کے خلاف نہیں جاتا بظاہر، اس کے تو ہم روز دیکھتے ہیں مشاہدے. خداوند تعالیٰ بعض دفعہ تو ایسی سچویشن پیدا کر دیتا ہے کہ جو بظاہر ہمیں قانون نظر آ رہا ہوتا ہے وہ اللہ کے ہاں ایک غیر معمولی خرق عادت ہے جو ہو جاتی ہے.
Dr. Shehzad gotten a question on Facebook اور پوچھا یہ گیا ہے کہ کیا کرائسس کے حالات میں بیوی کو دیے گئے تحائف بیچ کر بچوں کی اسکول کی فیس ادا کی جا سکتی ہے؟
اگر بیوی اجازت دے، جو آپ نے تحفہ دے دیا اس کی مالک بیوی بن جائے. بیوی اگر کہے گی تو آپ ضرور کریں، ورنہ پھر جو کچھ آپ کے پاس ہے اس کو تو شروع کیے نا بیچنا.
جی بہت شکریہ. So that was it. We don't have any other raised hand or any other questions. So maybe we can end our session for the day and definitely looking forward to see you next week.
جی
Thank you so much.